Hello and welcome to another Industry Leader Insights here on HECM World. I'm Andrew Montesi. Now, one of the great things about these segments is being able to step back from the day-to-day news cycle to look at the bigger picture trends that are shaping our industry. And today I want to talk about one that we all know is becoming increasingly important. When we talk about retirement, one phrase comes up time and time again, and it's aging in place. For years, it's been largely viewed as a lifestyle choice. People want to stay in the family home because it's familiar. It might be where they've raised their family. It's close to friends, neighbours and community. And community is key for all of us, but especially seniors. Those reasons have not changed, but something much bigger is happening. The conversation around ageing in place is shifting from an emotional one to an economic one. Because when you step back and you look at what's happening across America today, housing affordability, mortgage rates, senior housing shortages, rising care costs and record levels of home equity, they all point in the same direction. Together, they're creating a new reality. For millions of older Americans, aging in place is no longer simply where they want to live. It's increasingly becoming the most financially viable option available. And today I want to unpack this major long-term trend and how it's impacting retirees and what it means for the reverse mortgage industry. All right, let's start with the demographics. The US population aged 65 and over has grown by 34% in the last decade, reaching around 58 million people. But here's the really important point. We're still only in the early stages of this demographic wave. The oldest baby boomers are now only entering their 80s, and that's where the age demand for retirement housing, assisted living, and healthcare typically accelerates. So the conversation around retirement housing isn't getting any smaller, it's only the beginning. For our industry, that's significant because the need for retirement funding strategies is only going to grow over the coming decade. At the same time, older Americans have never held more housing wealth. Americans aged 62 and over now hold a record $14.66 trillion in home equity. And according to Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies, the median homeowner aged 65 or older now has around $250,000 in home equity. Think about that for a moment. For millions of retirees, their greatest financial asset isn't sitting in a pension fund or an investment portfolio. It's sitting inside the family home. Housing has quietly become one of America's largest retirement assets, as we often talk about. But despite that wealth, many retirees remain under financial pressure. Harvard researchers found that 1 in 3 older households is housing cost burdened. And that's an important distinction. Someone can have hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity, even $1 million. But if most of that wealth is locked inside their home, it doesn't necessarily help pay those property taxes, insurance premiums, healthcare costs, or everyday living expenses. They're asset rich, but sometimes cash flow constrained. That's why we need to stop viewing home equity simply as accumulated wealth. Increasingly, it's becoming retirement infrastructure. For years, it seemed pretty straightforward. If retirement becomes expensive, just downsize. But does that advice still hold up? In many cases, I don't think it does. Higher mortgage rates, higher insurance premiums, higher property taxes, HOA fees, moving costs, limited housing inventory. All of these factors mean moving into a smaller home doesn't necessarily reduce your housing costs at all. In fact, Realtor.com estimates that more than half of all outstanding mortgages remain below 4%, while nearly 80% remain below 6%. Imagine giving up a mortgage locked in at 3% to finance another home at today's rates. That's not necessarily downsizing financially. That may actually increase your monthly housing costs. And recent research also suggests that homeowners over 65 receive approximately $20,000 less than younger sellers when they sell their home. And according to the National Association of Home Builders, almost 75% of American households cannot afford a median price new home under today's market conditions. So increasingly, downsizing isn't just emotionally difficult, it's becoming financially difficult as well. Now, this is a stat that really caught my attention. According to NICMAP, America is projected to face a 550,000 unit shortage of senior housing by 2030. That's equivalent to around a $275 billion investment gap. To keep up with demand, the industry would need to more than triple its current pace of development. Think about what that actually means. We've spent years assuming that retirees will eventually leave the family home and move into retirement communities or assisted living. But what if there's simply aren't enough places for everyone who wants or needs to make that move? That really does change the conversation entirely, because aging in place stops being simply a preference, it becomes the default outcome. And the evidence suggests that that is already happening. Cushman & Wakefield reports that senior housing occupancy has now increased for 20 consecutive quarters, reaching 90% occupancy. Demand outpaced new supply by almost 5 to 1, while construction activity has fallen to its lowest level since 2012. The shortage isn't something we might face one day, it's already emerging today. Now, of course, staying home isn't without its challenges. Many existing homes simply weren't designed for aging. Only around 10% of homes are considered aging ready. Many homeowners also need to make modifications to remain safe and independent. And care costs continue to rise. Care Scout estimates that in-home care now averages around $35 per hour, while assisted living averages approximately $6,200 per month. Now, those are really significant expenses. But when you compare those costs with today's housing market, when you factor in those moving costs, higher interest rates, the shortage of suitable senior housing, and the value that many homeowners have already built inside their existing home, remaining where you are often becomes the more financially rational decision. Not necessarily cheap, but the smartest. This is where I think our industry has a tremendous opportunity. For years, we've largely positioned reverse mortgages around solving individual retirement challenges. But perhaps the bigger story is much broader than that. America is entering a period where millions more homeowners are likely to remain in their homes for longer than previous generations. And as we've talked about, it's not simply because they prefer to, but because the alternatives are becoming more expensive, less affordable, and in many markets, increasingly difficult to access. Now, if that's true, then perhaps we are asking the wrong question. The question is no longer, will older homeowners age in place? The research increasingly suggests that yes, they will. The better question is, how will they fund it? Now, that's where home equity enters the conversation. Not simply as accumulated wealth, not simply as a financial product, but as one of the largest retirement resources that millions of Americans already own. And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities and one of the biggest conversations this industry will have over the next decade. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for another Industry Leader Insights here on HECM World.